I'm going to replace the movement in my Seiko Samurai. And attach the strap. Simple, right? Bent it. So I went off and ordered a new secondhand. Okay, it seems to be on. Now the question is it going to fit? But as you can tell, that lollipop at the end of the second hand looks like it'll hit the chapter ring if I lower this any further. Well, as you saw in the introduction, I've been trying to replace the 4R35 movement in my Seiko Samurai. I've been having some problems with that movement that I chronicled, and I finally decided to fix it myself. So I've got a new NH35 movement, and I was able to put it in and get the dial and the hour and the minute hand put back on. But then when trying to replace the second hand, the most difficult part of this entire project, I bent it. So I had to go out and buy a new part for that second hand. I talked to a couple ADs and was able to secure one, but when I received it, it's a bit different than what came on the watch. It's a bit longer and has a little ball at the end of it. I was able to put that second hand on pretty easily, but then when I tested how it would fit into the case, it turned out it was just too long. The chapter ring would hit that second hand, so I had to stop and do some research. And that brings us up to today. I've checked around on the internet and with several people and other part supplier, and they do confirm that the part I got is what Seiko recommends as a replacement second hand for the Seiko Samurai, but it just doesn't fit. So I've got two options. One, to continue looking around for a better second hand, or to try to trim that piece down to size. And I've decided to do the latter. Several people have suggested that I use this high-tech tool, a nail clipper, to carefully trim off what I need from that new part. It's new, it's clean, and it's sharp. So we're going to see how that works. If I can't do it, then I'll just have to continue to search for the appropriate part or some other solution for my second hand. But hopefully I'll be able to finish the project on this episode of Adventures with Time. So I'm going to try to cut the tip of this new second hand so it will fit. Obviously, I'm going to have to take the hand off the dial so that I can cut it cleanly. But first, I want to try some experiments cutting the old hand, since I'm not going to use it again, to see how that process goes. But before I do that, I want to measure the old hand to see how long it is. It looks to be just about 17.5 millimeters overall. So I know how much I have to cut off the new one. Now, what I'm going to use to cut, as I said before, is a fairly sharp nail clipper. This is what's been suggested from discussions with people on the internet and elsewhere. Before I do any of that, let me take a close-up look at the tip of the old hand, just to see what it looks like. Now, this is hard to see on camera, but it looks like it's got just a straight cut on it. So there doesn't seem to be any special treatment at the end of that tip. So let me try to cut the old hand just a little to see how it works. There it goes. Give a cut. And where's that tip? Let me use a tool to tap it out. There it is. Just a maybe 1.5 millimeter cut. Now let's take a close look at the new tip of that cut hand to see what it looks like and if it matches what it was before. And it looks like a fairly clean cut, almost the same as the old one. I don't think anybody without a magnifying glass would be able to tell the difference. So let me just check if I could cut that tip off without taking the hand off the dial, since it was such a pain to put on. doesn't look to be so much space. I'm afraid that if I tried to do that, I would probably bend the hand and ruin it. So I'm going to have to take that new second hand off, cut it, and reinstall it. So now, how much should I cut off? So I think my first cut should leave that new hand just a little longer than the original. Just in case I screw it up, I can always cut a little more off and I don't have to order yet another second hand. So the first thing I have to do is take that new second hand off the dial so I can cut it. And I put it in the movement holder so I can do that. Now I should have been using the dial protector to avoid scratching or hurting the dial, but I forgot to do that. So just pulling off the second hand without bothering the hour or the minute hand. And that came off pretty easily. Now I just want to measure to double check that I cut off just the tip and I have enough of that second hand to reach the hour indices. So now let me use my nail clippers to just cut off that tip. There we go. Cut. And get it all the way off. There it is. And where's that tip? Now to put that second hand back on the dial. And of course, this is the part that causes me the most problems. Again, put it in the movement holder and give it a try. Getting to pick it up on the correct side is, of course, a little difficult, and then getting it right over that hole, and I'm using that hand presser, and I got it in. Now I'll show you in the macro lens how that second hand passes over the minute hand without touching it. And you can see that it's got some nice clearance. It's a little bent upwards at the tip, but I think once it's in the case, you wouldn't be able to see that. So it seems to be running okay. None of the hands are touching one another. Seems to be moving freely. So now I need to put it back into the case. Of course, to do that, once again, I need to remove that stem. And of course, I'm getting pretty adept at doing that after having to put it on and take it off several times. Knowing the place to push, and it comes off pretty easily. There it goes. Now I lay the movement down on my little resting pad, open up the case back, and give everything a good cleaning with my hand blower and a little microfiber cloth, just to make sure there are no dust particles on the inside of the case, cleaning off any smudges I accidentally got on the underside of that crystal. Cleaning off the dial also, make sure there are no specks on that. Then we lay the dial right side up and slowly lower the case over it right into position. Flip the whole thing over and press the movement into the case, making sure that the stem hole is aligned with the stem hole on the case. Give it another quick blow on the underside of the movement and then stick in the stem and crown, put the seal back on, and screw down the case back. Everything seems to be working nicely. Everything seems to be aligned. Crown works nice. So now let's just see how the new movement is operating on the Timegrapher. Why is this so noisy? Let me take it out of the case and put it on the Timegrapher. What is going on here? Out of the case, it works perfectly. In the case, it's got all these erratic beats. I need to think about this for a minute. Well, after looking around on the internet, talking to a few people, I found out that I really should have replaced the plastic movement spacer, or movement ring that came on the new movement. If you remember, that was a step that I wasn't sure about it, and after I measured them, I thought that they were the same, so I didn't switch them. Turns out that I probably should have. So now I got to go and take the hands and the dial off the new movement and switch those movement spacers, put the dial and the hand back on, and see if that fixes my problems. So let's see. Well, let me speed through taking off the hands and the dial face and the stem and crown. You've seen it before, you don't need to see it again. So the way to get this movement holder out is just to pry this little plastic off, and it came loose over there, and there should be another one over here. There we go. And maybe one more there. Okay, got most of it off. There's one, there we go. Okay, I'm going to put this movement aside for now and get the original movement. Put this ring over here. Once again, look for those. There's that one. That one. And caught. Okay. So now I don't want to miss this up. Here are the two movements. I'm just going to switch the rings, retaining rings, and put this one back on later. Now, I want to put this movement spacer onto the new movement. These movement retainer rings have these little segments on them that just catch into here and over here. And of course, I think I can line up this cutout here with that space there where the crown stem goes. Okay, that went on. Give it a good cleaning. Let's get the dial out. Give that a good cleaning. And this has to go, let's see, we'll put the peg right there. Let's look for where the crown stem goes, right there. So this goes right in there. Okay, now time to put on the hands. Once again, I got to put the crown back on so I can set the watch to midnight. Put the hour hand on right at 12. Put the minute hand on right at 12. And now the most difficult part, putting that second hand back on. Takes some time, but I got it done. Okay, let's put this all back together. So now we lower the case on the movement, flip it over, get it to seat properly and fully. Let me just double check if it looks like it's all the way in. Now we want to put the stem and crown back on. Let's see if that all works. Okay, and give everything a nice cleaning. Put the gasket on. All looks good. Let's tighten down the crown. Okay, moment of truth. Okay, let's see how it performs. So this looks pretty good. So everything looks good. My only question is whether or not I should have changed the stem to the one that came with the new movement. Because you'll see when I unscrew the crown, it just popped, so I can wind it, and then moving it out to the first position. It's not very far out from the case. I mean, it's still obviously very manageable, but don't remember how it was before and whether this is appropriate distance for it to move when unscrewed. What do you people think? Should I, on an upcoming video, try to replace the crown stem? Well, this has been a several-week project for me, but an educational one. First, I learned how to source some watch parts like a new movement and the unexpected need to get a new second hand. And I added some tools to my toolbox. But the real learning came as to how to dismantle and reassemble a watch. That is, taking the stem and crown out, removing the handsets, removing the dial, even removing the movement retaining ring or spacer ring. And of course, how to put all of those back. And I ran into a couple of problems like bending the second hand, having to replace it and learn how to trim a new second hand, and the issue I had with whether or not I needed to switch the movement retaining ring from the original movement. All in all, a very educational and satisfying set of activities, if not at times very frustrating and anxiety producing. Let me know what you thought of this project and any questions you might have, and I'll see you on my next video.